So, as I was saying yesterday, we need to go back and look at where we are heading. Hmm. And the oldest records that we have, at least we have, about where one heads on in one's spiritual journey till one reaches the goal, or what is the goal. The earliest literature that we have in our possession are the Upanishads and the Vedas. So I'm going to take you into that a little bit. All practical Kriya starts tomorrow, okay? Don't worry. Those who haven't got Kriya, you will get your Kriya, no problem. But let's understand this. Are we just doing Kriya to breathe in and out, or fly in the air, or walk on the water, or something like that? Or are we doing it for something else? The byproduct might be that you might fly in the air, doesn't matter. No point. Today you can go in a helicopter, you don't have to fly. So Upanishads. Now I want to explain to you, especially people who are new, who come for the first time, what is this Upanishad? People talk a lot about Upanishad. You go back even to some Western philosophers and you hear them saying about the Upanishad. What is this Upanishad? So we have to start from the beginning. In the early days, they say, I'm saying they say because the Upanishad rishis also say, they say, Iti Shushruma Purvesham, so said the ancients. So I'm also saying. The ancients say that in the olden days, the truth or the reality which we seek, the spiritual truth, was revealed to different sages, to different yogis, to different rishis in deep states of meditation. Now, so suppose here we have a congregation of rishis, let's say. All of you have got some kind of a revelation, some kind of an intuition which is beyond ordinary thinking and have discovered something. Now it's like a whole body of literature scattered here and there. Now there was one man, a rishi called Vyasa, who gathered all this information, uh, compiled it into different parts, and created the four Vedas. And his name was Vyasa. And he is called the Veda Vyasa because the word Vyasa in Sanskrit means a compiler. That's all, a compiler. He compiled the Vedas, so he is Veda Vyasa. So, he compiled them and split these whole body of literature into four parts. You don't have to remember, I'm just giving you a background since we are here. Unless somebody tells you, oh, there are 10 Vedas. No, there are only four. So, he compiled them into Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharvana Veda, four Vedas. So, the whole body of literature called the Vedas is a result of the spiritual experiences in a high state of spiritual communion with the truth, compiled and split into four different parts for convenience. Also because of the content. Content is a little bit different, although the center point is one. So now they are the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. Okay. Now, normally, when you say Vedas, people think only about the first portion of the Veda, which is the Samhita. It is important, but there's something more important than the first part. The first part is important. For instance, the Gayatri mantra, which is so much discussed, and in the olden days, nobody was allowed to discuss it, but now being so much discussed and chanting and teaching Gayatri and so on. There's even an organization in India called the Gayatri Parivar, family of Gayatri. Hmm. Now, this comes from the first Veda, Rig Veda, from the Samhita portion. So, Samhita is not less important. Basically, they are hymns um, which were chanted by the rishis, sung by the rishis. The next portion of the Vedas, all the four Vedas, are what are called the Brahmanas. Now, the Brahmanas are those portions of the Vedas which are mostly ceremonial in their content. Suppose the Gayatri has been taught in the Rig Veda, 126th mandala, I think. The rishi who discovered Gayatri was Vishwamitra. Now, if you look at the word Vishwamitra, it means friend of the universe. Vishwa, Mitra, friend. So, okay, now this Gayatri mantra, if you look at the Brahmanas, you will find instructions on how to chant it, how to use it, what way you can perform a yajna or a ceremony using the Gayatri and so on. It comes in the Brahmanas. So the Brahmanas are the ceremonial portion of the Vedas. Okay. Now there's another part of the Vedas which is called the Aranyakas. All the four Vedas. The Aranyakas are those parts of the Vedas which were taught in the forest hermitages of the great rishis to a few students, sitting face to face with each other. No microphone, no recording. They recorded it in their heads. So this portion is the Aranyaka. They were in forest hermitages. Why forest? Because, like, I won't call this a forest, but there are plenty of trees. And we are sitting in a tent, which is quite close to what we did during the Upanishadic period. And today for us, there is no electricity. I mean, this thing is also not working. So then the normal condition was that the teacher and the student sat together. Only few students, not so many, few students, due to various reasons. And it was taught in a low tone, whispered, because others don't hear what is being said. Because there is a chance that if you understand the Upanishads before you are ready for it, you might even turn into an atheist. So it was whispered quietly between teacher and so it was called Rahasya, the great secret. It's very easy to understand this. The highest teaching, the highest level of Buddhist teaching, for instance, one says one reaches Shunyata, right? Shunya means nothing. It's not nothing, actually, it's no thing. It's not a thing, therefore, it's not nothing. It's that Shunya from which this whole universe has come and which goes back into it. So it's not nothing. But the Buddhist word used is Shunya. You would be surprised to know that the great Gorakhnath in the Siddha Siddhanta Paddhati, which is his magnum opus, also refers to the truth sometimes as Shunya. Now, if you interpret Shunya as nothing, then it becomes an atheistic teaching, right? There's nothing. But it's not so. So, to make sure that the student is ready to understand, it was whispered. A student went to a teacher after a great deal of training already. He has passed through all the stages of life, from brahmacharya to grihastha to, brahmacharya is the student life, then the married life, then Vanaprastha. You have done most of your work, retire into the forest, sit with the rishi and listen to the wisdom. But you are already prepared from your student days, which is called brahmacharya, and then grihastha, the family life. Jumping from brahmacharya straight on to renunciance life of a sannyasin was very rare because it's not easy. You might go there and then you may not fit into it and you cannot return. It's difficult. So they said, better pass through this life. The greatest breaker of the ego is a married life. I know it. So, therefore, every student was normally supposed to pass through this from brahmacharya, which is the student period. So, by then you are prepared to go into the married life because you already know how to keep some control over your senses, not get too angry. You know what happens. And all these things are learned, and the student becomes qualified to get into grihastha life. Ancient days, I'm talking. Now there is no such thing. So, and then he goes after the family life into what is called the vanaprastha, which means living in the forest. That's when the Upanishads comes into the picture. So, otherwise you want to lead a married life and you have a wife and kids and you say all this is illusion. You have done all this job. Now you're free. That doesn't mean you have to live till 80, okay? To be free. You can free yourself when you want, actually. So then you learn the Upanishad in the forest hermitages. So therefore, that portion of the Vedas was called Aranyakas, that which is learned in the Aranya, forest. And after learning, if somebody wanted even to give up that life and to become a complete sannyasin, it was allowed to do so. Not required, because you will find many rishis who you meet in the Upanishads and in the Vedas, they all, many of them are not sannyasins. They're not monks. I mean, not monks. I mean, people have a wrong understanding, for instance, of the word lama. You say lama, they think he must be a celibate monk, not required. Lama simply means a holy man. Okay? So, anyway, so, okay. So, this is the Upanishad. So, where does the Upanishad come? It comes at the end of the Vedas. End of every Veda, there is a few Upanishads attached. The voice is coming back. Thank you, sir. But anyhow, we are doing well without it. This is easier. I had to shout. So now, can I speak softly? As is my usual custom. You can still hear me, right? Great. So, I can whisper now like the Upanishad. So, at the end of every Vedic Samhita, which I have explained, Samhita, you will find one portion which is called Upanishad. So it's part of the Veda, it's all Vedas. It's not as if Upanishad is different from the Vedas. Now, because it occurs at the end of the Vedas, it's called Vedanta. Because the Sanskrit word anta means end. End. So, one that occurs at the end of the Vedic literature, last part, is therefore called the Veda Anta Vedanta. This is the study of Vedanta. I'm saying this especially to my own countrymen because we find hardly people studying anything these days. Everybody is onto software and internet and things like that. And the other problem is everybody seems to know, so you can't explain anything. It's easier to understand when you don't know, right? Mm. So, anyway, why I'm saying this, Vedanta is a very wide term. It includes all the studies in wisdom, in the subject of the wisdom scriptures, which is the Upanishad. And the Upanishads have been translated and commented upon by all the great teachers. Starting, of course, we hear of Shankara first, Adi Shankara, who did the Advaita system. But there have been other interpreters before, because when Shankara talks about the interpretation of the Upanishad, he refers to an earlier teacher and says, he says so, but I say so. So there must have been something. We don't know much about that. But so Shankaracharya translated and commented upon the Upanishads, basically. And he gave the interpretation which is known as the Advaitic interpretation. Many people, even in my country, do not know that there are other systems of philosophy and other teachers who have translated and commented on the Upanishad. Vishishta Advaita from Anujacharya. Dvaita Vedanta, again Vedanta, of the Madhva school of thought. Vallabhacharya's Shuddha Dvaita, and so on and so forth. There are many. But normally, when we hear, especially I see in my country, when you say Vedanta, they only think of Adi Shankara. This is very strange. I was pleasantly surprised by many years ago, I went to Harvard. We had a talk in the philosophy section, and it was on the Upanishad. So I said Vedanta 4-5 times. Everybody listened, yes, yes, yes. There was an American professor in the front row, put up his hand. Sir, he said, when you refer to Vedanta, are you referring to Advaita Vedanta or Vashishta Advaita or Dvaita? Nobody else asked me this question. Why he studied, done his homework, right? And tried to understand. So anyway, so this is Vedanta. Now, the great Shankara also said that it is called Vedanta because once this is understood, there's nothing much to be known about. So end. You can stop learning. Roll off your tents, take up your books and go home. That was his interpretation. So anyway, now what is this Upanishads? Basically, there are 11 principal Upanishads. 11. You don't have to remember the number. And there are many other Upanishads apart from the principal Upanishads. Now, these 11 principal Upanishads are the oldest that we have, the earliest, let's say. And the rest are after that. Now, the other Upanishads, including the Yoga Upanishads, there is a set of 20 or 21 Upanishads which are called the Yoga Upanishads. And you'll find all the teachings of yoga that we have today, including the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, have been discussed thoroughly in those ancient times in the Yoga Upanishads. Some people tend to think that there is a technique that we teach in Kriya called the hum saw. They think it was invented later by somebody or Babaji found it. No. Babaji taught it, of course. If you go back to the Yoga Upanishads, which is ancient, there is actually a Yoga Upanishad which is called Hamsa Upanishad. What I'm trying to say is that all the ancient teachings come from the Upanishad. To the Yoga Upanishads, but they are not the principal Upanishads. The principal Upanishads are 11 in number, and they are the earliest. They're also called principal Upanishads because they have been commented upon by all the great teachers. Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta, Advaita, everybody. This is the Upanishad. Now, let me define the word Upanishad for you. It's very important because if you learn as the Upanishads want you to learn, then you can understand things properly and know where we are moving forward, even through the practice of Kriya or any other sadhana. I'm not saying that Kriya is the only sadhana in this world. There are many other sadhanas. When I say sadhana, practices. There are many other practices and many other Kriyas also. Not only that our Kriya is, it's not like that. That would be very funny because the truth is so vast and expansive. If I say this is the only way, there's something wrong with me. There must be many ways. Now, of course, you know the story of the three blind men who went to see the elephant, right? You know the story. I see everybody shaking. Anybody who doesn't know? Now, this is usually considered a Sufi story because it was popularized by a great Sufi called Jalaluddin Rumi, who wrote what is his most famous teaching? Masnavi. But Rumi picked it up from ancient Jain sources. If you go back into India's history, you will find this story in ancient Jain sources, but he popularized it. And the story is about three blind men who go to find out what an elephant is. They're blind, okay? So one touches the leg, the foot of the elephant, and says, an elephant is like a big pillar which has a rough surface and it moves sometimes. And we have been warned that if you go too close, it might land on our head and that will be our end. Definition of an elephant. The other blind man touched the tail of the elephant and said it's very rough. It's shaped like a toilet brush and it moves all the time. If you go too close, you might get hit on the face with the bristles of the tail. Right? The third blind man went and touched the trunk of the elephant. He said, an elephant is like a rubber hose. I mean, there's no rubber then, whatever hose. And it keeps moving and keeps making sounds, breathing of the elephant. Correct, descriptions are all right. But descriptions are only what they know about. So there was a big battle, big fight, as happens between religions, for instance, or political parties. There was a big fight saying which is the correct definition of an elephant. It went to an extent where it became actually fistcuffs and so on. And that's when a man walked in who was not blind. Let's say the spiritual teacher. He was not blind. And he said, hey, what's going on? Because by the time he arrived, one guy was sitting on the other and trying to strangle him because there's difference in the definition of an elephant. So he said, what are you guys fighting about? He said, the definition of an elephant. So he said, this is the elephant. So this guy said, you're right. You're also right. But in the ultimate sense, I think you're all wrong. So he said, how can this be? Because he said, you are blind, you don't see. So you touch some parts and decided this is your definition. Okay, that's good. But you can't say the other guy's definition is wrong because he touched some other part and that's his definition. But I can see, my eyes are open, and therefore I see the whole elephant. The whole elephant is what you have defined partly. On the whole, is much larger than all your definitions. It's this elephant that the Upanishad looks at, which is beyond all definitions, which but also can be defined according to your understanding. Hmm. So the Vedas declared 2000 years ago, perhaps, Ekam Sat Vipra Bauda Vedanti. There is only one truth. Different people may call it by different names or different views. So anyway, um, so where was I? Where did we come from? The Upanishad to the elephant. Huh? Upanishad, yes. So the word Upanishad is important, please, because when we move forward, we need you be very useful when you do your kriya. The word Upanishad comes from three little syllables. In Sanskrit language, there is no word which does not have a meaning. It has some meaning or the other, and it's usually a word of action. All the nouns are made of verbs, modified verbs. So, yeah. The three syllables are upa, ni, and shad. Now, upa, what is the meaning of the word upa? Upa means, I said before that people sat together in the forest academies and studied face to face, close to the teacher. So, Upanishad means close, not shut, but sitting close to each other. The student and the teacher discussed and found out various factors, various things. So this is upa. It also means closeness of the mind. You know, the ultimate truths expressed by the Upanishads are somewhat understood by words, but the actual understanding comes when the mind of the teacher and the student are close to each other in their frequency. Then you understand it without words. In fact, the Upanishad, there's one Upanishad which says, Yad vacha na abhyutitam, that which words cannot explain. So all our 2 days are waste. So I'm just yapping away, but the words cannot explain it. But then without words, you can't even say that words cannot explain it. So anyway. um, yeah, so what did I say? Upa. So upa is to sit close to each other. Now it's possible with internet. There need not be anybody else in the room. You can be alone. Except that you shouldn't be drinking coke and chewing things, attending. So, upa is close. It also means that the minds of the teacher and the student, I don't want to use the word disciple, it's too far, student, should have somewhat the same frequency. Then the understanding is rather transferred. It's called bodhicitta in the Buddhist teachings. Something is transferred. But the frequency has to be the same. So this is close. The minds are close. The bodies are not that close, but close, and so on. Now, the last word, last syllable, nobody asked me about the second. The last syllable is shad. Shad. Shad literally means sit. Sit down. I mean, the idea is when you're sitting down, you're serious and you're attending to something. When you get up and go, I know that you're not attending anymore. So, which means complete attention sitting down. It also means physically you may be sitting, but the mind also has to sit. Uh, it's not so difficult to sit physically, but once you sit down, I can sit here physically and in 2 minutes or half a second travel to Bern city and come back. Then I'm not sitting. This is the meaning of the word sit, settle down. Now, again, the great Shankara, Adi Shankara. I'm not a Shankarite, please. Adi Shankara, good things wherever are have to be taken. Adi Shankara said that Shad also means, in Sanskrit, churn. Nobody can argue with Shankara because he was such a great Sanskrit scholar, so he knew the word. So the other meaning of the word Shad is to churn. 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 You know what happens? You need to churn the mind from its accepted modes of thought, from its accepted circuits, and clear it so that it is ready to change its circuits. This is churning. We have to rethink on things which we have already accepted as real, or already accepted as right or wrong. This is churning. This is another meaning of the word shat. Putting your logic upside down sometimes. Which means, for instance, that what you think is absolutely real may not be so, and what you thought was not real may be so. Maybe. Leave it there. Because if it is so, then you're again getting into the same pattern. Maybe so. This is the shad. If I have a little more time, I think we have time. You're doing Kriya only tomorrow. If no, I can say no. I thought it's good to prepare and go slowly. No hurry. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you something about this thing about churning or putting your logic, looking at it in a different way of the same object. Even the physical world. Even the physical world. Psychologically, if you have a prejudice against somebody, that person will always look terrible to you. If you have a positive prejudice towards somebody, the person will always look good to you. We don't know actually how the person is. It's churning. Okay? So I said that something which we think is something, according to our perceptions, may not be so. To discover this is one of the acts of Upanishad. For instance, I look at this phone and I say, now this is a rectangular object with a certain thickness. This is the size of it. And it is green at the back. And so now the process of seeing the phone or anything else for that matter, it's not so simple as it seems. It's quite complicated in the sense the process of seeing is I see you and your image is reflected into my eyes and my eyes then register it. Retina takes it up and then it goes to the optic nerve and it is processed in the brain and I say this is this, right? Now I see this as a rectangle because my eyes, like yours, most of yours, are made of a certain kind of lens, convex lens of a certain power. Those whose powers are different have to wear glasses, but still, there is a convex lens when we are born in our eyes. It's not a concave lens, believe me. And therefore, when I reflect the image in front of me, I see it in a particular form. If the lens was different, I might have seen it in a different form. And if all of us were born with that kind of lens, we would all seen round objects as square, maybe. We don't know. We haven't tried it. If you think this is not possible, well, there are many creatures in this earth who have different kind of eyes. You probably know that the housefly has compound eyes. So what would it think if it looks at me with its compound eyes, many eyes together? You'll know it only if you get into the housefly's brain. We don't know it. Elephant is so huge. Who knows how it sees us, human beings, big or small, depends on its lens. But we have defined it because generally that's what we see. And we say this must be the truth, this must be correct. The great poet Alexander Pope said, the difference is as great between the optic seeing as the object seen. So how can I say with certainty that this shape which I see is the correct shape? Maybe there are other creatures who see it differently. I cannot. I can't say I'm wrong, but I can say I'm not sure. This is called churning. Changing your way of looking at things. Um, if I keep my watch here, I think it's a very small thing, right? But imagine, I'm talking about the size. Imagine a little creature like an ant or something walking across the watch. It takes quite a bit of time. For it, it's quite big. For me, it's only this much. So, what is the actual size of this? For me, I can say it's this much. For the ant, it is different. I really cannot define the size. This is called churning. The Upanishad. Then, really, just look at it. How, in what a relative world are we living in? And yet we are 100% sure it is so. This changing of I am sure and breaking it up and taking you towards an uncertainty where you say, well, I'm not so sure, is what the Upanishad does. This is the meaning of Shad. If you think that this is too far to understand, please know that today, even in science, forget about philosophy, physical sciences, we have come from the absolute certainty of Newtonian physics to the uncertainty of quantum physics. The most important theory today in physics is what is called the theory of uncertainty. At time we were absolutely sure. Yeah, in daily life you need Newtonian physics, I can understand. Especially if you want to levitate and you know that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And you build up a lot of gas in your tummy. Yes, but this is Newton. But when you go to really looking at the quantum things, I'm not saying particles because this is the whole uncertainty all about in quantum physics. Because you actually cannot see a quantum whatever with even the best microscope. You know it exists because of its reactions in a magnetic field, electromagnetic field. And scientists have discovered that it acts like a particle. And then you look at it, it's now starting to act like a wave. Then you say, oh, it's a wave. Now it's starting to act like a particle, so nobody knows. This is the brick with which this entire universe is made, is built of. So they call it the uncertainty principle. And some scientists have even gone to the extent of saying that it depends on the observer. The Upanishad comes to that by saying ultimately the witness or the observer is more important than what is being observed. We'll get there slowly. So, this is the Shad. I hope we have pushed ourselves a little bit out of the framework which we have gathered over the centuries. This also in practical life helps you to look at other people without prejudice. Psychologically, don't form an opinion about anybody. It can change at any time. The human mind can change at any time. So, since we get stuck to our images, we really live in a world of non-communication. You know why? Because you have already formed an opinion about me. Reading my autobiography. If you had come without it, it would have been nice. But you have read the autobiography, this, that, what people say, IT, YouTube, this is iTube, YouTube, and so on. So you have formed an opinion, right? And I have formed an opinion, I generally try not to, of persons I know who have met. So I like it better when I see new people, no opinions. It's okay, it's okay. No problem. So, so what did I say? Opinion. Yeah, so you have formed an image of me. And I, if I know you, have formed an opinion about you. Now I say I'm communicating with you, or you're saying you're not. Your image of me and my image of you is communicating. There is no real communication. Now, why I'm saying all this is because this is what the Upanishads deal with. Okay, so then there's the center syllable which I left behind, the knee. Now everybody knows it's good to have good knees, but this knee, even I get knee is a syllable which indicates the attitude of the student vis-a-vis the teacher, which means, now of course you're sitting down and I'm sitting up. Knee means, in Hindi the word niche is derived from knee, means down. Student is down, but this is not to do with physical things, okay? It's to do with the attitude. The Upanishad is called Shruti. You know what Shruti is? That which is heard. Not that which is written, read, memorized, looked into, and so on. It's what is heard, is Shruti. This is the Shrotra, the ears. So if the mind is clear, when it has lost all its prejudice, at least to some extent, everybody has some prejudices, then the word that is being said immediately falls onto this heart, which is free, and sprouts. If it's still covered with prejudices, it's like weeds. You need to remove them, and then the Shruti might have some effect. But in a person whose mind is clear, the Shruti immediately has an effect. You hear and you know, yeah, okay, got it. So for that, the attitude of the student towards what is being taught need not be the teacher. What is being taught should be, I don't know, so let me understand. Not, I know, so let me interpret. See the difference? I don't know, so let me understand. Now that attitude is expressed by the word ni. Also, the fact that you need to be empty to receive. If you are full, you cannot take anything more because it's already full. You know the story of, is there a screen out there? No. Oh, that's, no, not for that. No TV screen, right? No, because some people are looking there. I thought there might be a screen. And there's a story, story of a learned professor, nothing against learned professors, who went to a Zen master. And the Zen masters live in contradictions. You don't know exactly what they're doing or what they are saying. And you can't stand up and say this, they might kick you out. They're wild guys. So, um, a professor went to a Zen master and said, "Sir, please teach me Zen. May I experience Satori?" Now, Satori is the word used in Zen for illumination. Or in the Nyingmapa school, it's called the Dzogchen. So, or Kaivalya, according to Patanjali. So he went to him and said, "Teach me Zen." So the master went inside and brought a cup of tea, a kettle, and a cup, put it on the table, started pouring tea. The professor said, "Okay." I asked him a serious question. He's giving me a cup of tea. It's okay. You can't say anything. He's a Zen master, right? Because you might thrown up. So he kept quiet. He poured the tea, and he poured the tea, and he poured the tea. The cup got full, and the tea started overflowing down the tablecloth. Then he couldn't take it anymore. He said, "Sir, the cup is overflowing." So the master put the kettle down and said to the professor, "Sir, your cup is overflowing. How can I give you Zen?" Because if he gives Zen, that will come out because it's already full of stuff. Now, connected to this, we're almost done the Upanishad definition. Don't worry, we have time. Connected to this, although we are trying to define the undefinable, but I want to tell you a story of a great yogi who lived in Banaras for many years and who is connected to also Kriya Yoga. His name was Shamacharan Lahiri Mahasaya. He lived in Banaras for many years. So he had given Kriya to somebody. You know Kriya? There are many parts of Kriya, but there is a simple form of Kriya which can be practiced very easily and anywhere, even in a flight, and that's called a Hamsa. We call it the Hamsa. Now, he had given the Hamsa Kriya to a great professor, a very well-known person. And every weekend, which is Sundays when he was not working, he would come back and say, "When will you give me the next technique?" This went on for days. "When will you give me the next technique?" And Lahiri Mahasaya kept quiet. He didn't say a word. Sometimes it's better not to speak than to, So one day when the professor came and he asked him, "When are you going to give me the next technique?" The local postman came in with some letters. The name of the local postman was Brinda. His name was Brinda. Later on, he became famous as Brinda Bhagat, which means devotee Brinda. So Brinda came in with his letters. And the professor had just finished asking him, "When are you giving me the next technique?" He had given him Hamsa only 4 weeks ago, mind you. So Lahiri Mahasaya called Brinda. "Come here." He said he had given him the same Hamsa At the same time, I said, given to the professor. He called him. He said, come in. So you have taken the Hamsa. Yes, sir. When can I give you the next technique? He put his hands up together, folded hands. Said, sir, please don't give me any more techniques. I cannot handle this. Because my neighbors have begun to suspect that I'm an alcoholic, a drunk. When I walk out after doing Hamsa, I'm doing this. I'm not going straight. And my eyes are red. They're beginning to suspect I'm alcoholic. And sometimes when I look at the letters, I'm a postman to deliver. The other day I looked at 3 letters and I said to myself, what are these 3 names? They're all one. I'm not able to deliver my letters. I want to resign from the job. And there is an irresistible, beautiful feeling going up my spine, and I'm always drunk. What am I to do? Why would you give me the second technique? I can't take it. So, Lahiri Masha, I turned to the professor and said, you heard? So, when you're in that state, come back. I will give you the next. This is the other side, the psychological side of knowing too much. Believe me, a stage will come if you understand these matters and do your kriya or whatever sadhana you're doing, it doesn't matter. A stage will come when your mind opens up to sources which are outside the understanding of the ordinary brain. For instance, you might think I did my homework in the Upanishads before coming. I was reading Tintin yesterday night when I went to sleep. Huh? You know Tintin? Also, my haircut is like Tintin. Because I didn't want my mind to be caught up in that Upanishad. Free. And today I am telling you about the Upanishad. Where does it come from? We would say that maybe he studied with Babaji for many years. I spent exactly 3.5 years with him, off and on then some time. And during all that time, he did not carry a book with him. Most of it came when we sat around the banks of a river and had a chat, and I got something was going on. So, the idea is, as I said earlier, to rewire the brain. And to rewire it, you need to first remove the old connections and then put in the new connections. Maybe at a higher stage, you can live even without the new connections. But at the moment, you need to do that. And then open the mind to things which are outside ordinary logic. So, in this matter, sometimes it's not like arithmetic. 2 plus 2 may not always be 4. It could be 7 or 8. Arithmetically wrong. So, this is what we are going to. So, this is the Upanishad. So, I'm going to take up the study of one or two, they're not the complete Upanishad, but some parts of it in this today that we have. And then maybe by the noon, the last part of the noon retreat, we will go slowly into Kriya and how Kriya is connected to understanding these matters. Okay? So we have about 15 minutes now, a little more. So, concerning the session we had now, relevant to the subject, if you have anything to discuss, you can put up your hand. This is what I'm going to do in every session, except the Kriya, because you'll be busy practicing. So, where did I give a talk yesterday?
Yesterday,
Okay.
Introductory session, you were talking about Swadhyaya and Ishwar Pranidhana, and you didn't talk about Tapa.
Yeah, but I'm asking for questions relevant to the subject discussed today in this session. You're right. What she said was that I did not, nobody came up with. I was trying to get it from people, and she was mum. She didn't say a word. The actual first sentence, tapasya. Tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. That means there is a word tapas, which means austerities, as it is normally interpreted. Tapas is from the Sanskrit word tap, meaning heat, which means increasing the heat within. The heat of pursuing the goal, the fire of the desire to reach the spiritual. This is tapasya, not standing on one leg like this. That you can't do in this yuga, in Kali Yuga. Uh, meaning of that is the meaning of tapas. Plus, when you do kriya, actually heat is built up in the system. That is also tapasya because Patanjali is referring to it. It's an yogic text. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question regarding Upanishads that you talked about. I would like to know what was the, not the exact year, but the estimation of when the Upanishads were kind of compiled, and if yeah, if they were compiled, why only in Sanskrit? Why don't we find the remains or the things of Upanishads in other cultures?
Philologically speaking, we are talking about something else, but since you asked the question, it's an academic question, it's not a spiritual question. But anyway,
Sorry.
for your curiosity, well, at a very conservative estimate, I think the Upanishads should be around 2000 years. It is very controversial because some people don't want to admit that 2000 years when they thought some people are walking around without clothes, they were talking about such high philosophy. People don't want to admit it, many people. But from a very conservative estimate, 2000 years would be good for the Upanishad. Okay. Why was it only in Sanskrit? Well, the Upanishads were in Sanskrit, or what we have today is an adaptation of ancient Sanskrit. Now, in those days, because that was the language which was known and understood by people, it was in Sanskrit, not for any other reason. Okay, and if you say, do you find this kind of discussions in other world scriptures? I can only say that I haven't made a deep or advanced study of those world scriptures, so cannot completely say yes or no to this question. But when I look at some of the ancient other systems of thought or other religions, I find that there are some points which I feel are quite similar, but I haven't done much research. I'll give you an example. Since you asked the question, the Upanishadic definition of the truth is in one word, tat, which means what? That. There's no way to describe what that is. Or is, not is this or that, tat. And also, additionally, tat tvamasi is from the Vedas and the Upanishad, which means in true reality, you are not what you think you are, but you are that. Okay. Tat, right? That. In fact, you just need to change the spelling of tat a little and it becomes that. Yeah. We don't know what the source of that is, but certainly it looks similar. Uh, door looks quite similar to dwar, which in Sanskrit means a door, entry. Anyway, so yeah, so that. Now there is an ancient story in another part of the world where a great teacher or a great, you can say, prophet climbs up a hill and he's curious because sees some light behind the trees, behind the bushes. They describe it as a fire behind the bushes, but whatever, some light. And as he enters, he hears a voice saying, take off your shoes, for you're stepping on sacred land. So we all take off our shoes when we go to temples. And do you walk in with the shoes? No. So he removes his shoes to the sacred land. He doesn't know what it is. And then he sees the glow of fire behind the bushes. And he's quite shocked and surprised and taken aback. And he asks, who are you? Because the voice also said something. So there's some being out there. He says, who are you? And the being, I don't know if anybody here knows a little bit of Hebrew. The voice says to this man, in this context, one Mr. Moses, he says to him, Ahiye Asher Ahiye, which means I am that I am. That's all. No definitions. I am that I am. There's no way to describe anything more from that being. So, since you asked me, do I see anything in other parts? I see some reflections here and there because I went through some of the others. If you are really serious to know if there is anything connected to this, go and read up. Don't waste your time. But if you like to, there is a beautiful text, ancient text, not in Sanskrit, luckily now translated into English now, called the Kabbalah. It's called the Zohar by Rabbi Salman ben Yochai. Get hold of that and you'll see many things which are, but of course it's written in another language. We can't say this is early or that, we don't know.
Thank you, sir. I had this question because I was reading one of the books that you recommended, the Serpent Power from Sir Arthur Avalon. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Theravada Buddhists, they reject the Upanishadic self. They also say that Parabrahman is no self. What is your view on that?
Well, now we have to look at this carefully. Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Buddhism has so many aspects to it today. The Theravada people say that they are the oldest original texts, and then this came later. Historically true too, but may not be philosophically accurate. But it is true. Now, what did you say Theravada says?
They say that consciousness, the supreme being, Parabrahman, that is not existing, that is categorized according to them as anatta, as no self.
No self, right.
So that it doesn't...
Okay. Now, when they say no self, it simply means that it has, from my understanding, it has no ego. Ourself, we recognize ourself because of our ego. Without the ego, we will not recognize the self. Okay. Now, suppose one has found some way to melt the ego away. When I say ego, not what I'm saying, I am big, not that. The very feeling of I is ego by itself. If I find some way of moving it off, in fact, Theravada says the ego itself is a construction of the mind. It doesn't exist. Anyway, but it exists. Even when the person says so, he's talking. So he has some ego, right? Temporary ego. Now, when that ego is, suppose, has vanished, there is still that consciousness there, but that consciousness does not have the limited self which we know of. So somewhere people got it all wrong. They thought there is no self at all. There is a self, but it is not the self that we define. It's not an individual self, but because it is consciousness, it certainly has a content of consciousness, which is pure consciousness, only witness. And if there is only witness, there is nothing to witness. Therefore, the Theravadins call it anatta.
Okay, but I'm asking a question because those people, those scholars, they say even what you now express is not true.
That is scholars, but not the realized people.
Thank you.
This is the problem with the scholars. They just argue on little things like hair-splitting arguments on whether this exists. You have to actually spiritually understand and experience these things, not
Well, but like the Abhidhamma, that scripture that
the
says
who.
Abhidhamma,
Mm.
that says there's only dependent origination. So one thing.
I don't want to discuss
Mm.
this matter. It just
Okay.
goes on into theory.
Okay.
Nobody knows anything about it except the theory. And I want to catch on to the theory and not let go of it. So we cannot do anything about it. It won't serve any purpose. I can, if you are ready to sit for 3-4 days and discuss, we can go into it. But
Thank you, sir.
whatever it is, whoever it is understood that the mind has to dissolve, mind has to quieten down, tranquility is required. All this is understood, right? If you say that tranquility is not required because there's nothing at all, then we don't move anywhere.
Sir, namaste. My question is actually you mentioned that Kriya Yoga is one of the way to attain the truth, and there are different ways to attain the truth. So we grown up, we have been taught bhakti in our life from a childhood, and my question is more on when we grow on the path. So bhakti and so Kriya Yoga, when we initiate and take it, so bhakti also can be continued, and that will be help us, or is it again? I'm a bit of kind of confused stage.
Now,
How should I take this?
No, this is a very big question, because when you are using the word bhakti constantly now, first we have to understand what bhakti is. It's not just lighting a lamp or going before the deity and saying, "Give me a promotion." This is not bhakti from the point of view of the Narada Bhakti Sutras, which are the authority on bhakti. So while it's okay, we are human beings, we might do all that. But if you truly understand the essence of what bhakti is, which we won't go into it now, then you will realize that it's more to do with something of the heart. And even Kriya, if it becomes a mechanical exercise, it's of no use. The heart has to open. So would be my understanding of bhakti. There are all kinds of bhaktis, like to agarbattis. If I am promoted, I will give you more bananas tomorrow. And this is one kind of agreed. Okay, we are human beings. Or most of the emails that I get is not about how to touch nothing, how to do Kriya. It's about, I haven't had a child. We are married for 10 years. Can you give us a child? The other day I told them I'm 75 years old. I can't. So this definition of bhakti has to be looked at very carefully. I can give you beautiful examples of bhakti from our great textbooks, but let's not. Yeah.
Namaste. My question is also kind of on bhakti. It's on the devotion, Ishvara Pranidhana.
Absolutely.
And you see, I think there's a saying in one Upanishad, the Lord resides in the heart. So I try to concentrate on my heart. But the word Lord is like, for me, it can be Jesus, then it can be also, I can feel very devotional or emotional on you or on Babaji, on the both Babajis. But sometimes I get confused to where to give my devotion to. It's really a big question to me.
Okay. Now, she partly answered your question in a way. You get what she was trying to say, that the heart is important. This is what I'm trying to say too. Otherwise, it becomes a merely intellectual affair, and the practice becomes merely a physical affair. So there has to be the art. We are human beings, right? You can't be totally free of emotions. So this aspect. Now, we will discuss this later. What you said. What are you? If I understood right, what you said was, so I have Jesus, and there is Babaji, and there is Krishna, and so where would I leave? Where would I go? Which is better for? This is what you're asking.
That's my question. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I feel I should go there. Then I feel
Okay.
maybe there.
So, but you're also talking about the heart.
Yes.
Okay. So somebody said this: lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. Who said that?
Rumi.
Who said that?
Jesus.
So we are also saying the same thing. Lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. We may say it in Sanskrit, somebody may say it in another language. What difference does it make? And as human beings, whatever one is attracted to, you can take up your worship and your meditation in that. You cannot suddenly shift to something else. It's not going to work. But in the ultimate analysis, you will find that it ultimately reaches the essence of being. Human being requires some anchor.
Yeah.
But know that finally there is no anchor, nothing left.
Yes, I know, but
Mm.
thank you.